have we'll just wait for a little while before we proceed. No. So that whoever comes will not really miss out of this discussion. I think we have presently we have the regular people who are on this platform on a regular basis. So, but if there's any that are new on this platform today, I want Mr. Johnson to just give a brief introduction about this platform, just 1 or 2 minutes, then before I kickstart. Thank you.
All right, so you are all highly welcome. So this is Safeoclock, Health and Safety Interactive Workshop. We have this workshop every week, Thursday by 6 p.m. So the aim is to help to improve our knowledge. We share our knowledge together with each other. Whatever we know, by sharing, we can learn more, and we can learn from others as well. So the platform gives us opportunity to also learn how to communicate. So we improve our communication skills by sharing our knowledge. We also give room for everybody, anyone that wants to prepare a presentation slide on the topic selected for the week. You have the room to present your slide and learn presentation, learn how to communicate effectively. And if possible, if there is any questions, we ask ourselves, and whichever one we cannot answer, we go home to research on it. So that is the aim of this Safeoclock Health and Safety Interactive Workshop. And we've been doing this for more than a year now. We started around April 2023. So, and we've not missed any week since the time we started, and we've learned a lot in the process. So I'm happy, and I also appreciate all who have joined us in these sessions, and I pray that we continue to come, join, and improve our knowledge while we enlighten others as well. So Mr. Stephen will take lead of today's presentation, and after his presentation, we'll take a turn to share our knowledge, share our experience, and also ask questions if there is need for any question. So thank you, and Mr. Stephen, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity once again today to really communicate this wonderful topic called modern day slavery and our roles. You know, why we are focusing on this is that we have a role to play as an occupational health and safety practitioner when it comes to modern day slavery. And it's not just only occupational health and safety professional that has a role to play. Everybody has a role to play. This is a societal problem. This is a global issue. That is why I said, or I decided to put it this way, that modern day slavery, a global crisis, is actually a global crisis indeed, because most of the continent who suffer most of this modern day slavery are the African continent and probably the Asians. You know, the Asians, and also they are part of this large population. So without further ado, I would just want to let us know a brief understanding, just like what I'm projecting here. We could say the modern day slavery is a pervasive human rights violation that affect millions of individuals worldwide. You know, it encompasses a range of a kind of exploitative practice, which include forced labor, human trafficking, debt bondage, even as we proceed, there are some other things that will come up that we'll get to understand that are classified as modern day slavery. Even when you are not paying your wages, it's part of modern day slavery. So a lot of things, more oftentimes, what happened within our workplace are an indicator of modern day slavery. But most of us, we don't know. So we need to know it today, and we need to continue to advocate. So in my second slide, you will see that we talk about the prevalence. There are prevalence of modern day slavery, and it is prevalence in different sectors, okay? It happens in the construction industry. We find it in the health and social care, agricultural sector, rather, facility management sector. We find it in manufacturing industry. We find it in hospitality. We find it in domestic work as well. And for most of us who know, we could see that this thing is even more prevalent in the domestic work sector. Even when you go to the agriculture, to the health and social care, we find a lot of people doing this home care job and all that. So, but I wouldn't want us to go into, because if we begin to break this thing one after the other, we will spend more time, but there are some little examples we could see how people because of the poor condition of their country, they are running to other Western world, being engaged to some certain kind of job because of the economic situation of their country or continent, and being engaged with different kind of recruitment agencies that even you yourself, you don't know what you are going to face there. It happens everywhere. Even where we are in the Middle East, we see a lot of things that happens. So we have a first-hand information, and practical experience about these things that are happening globally. So that is why I would not want to begin to nail the nail on the head on these issues, but I believe we know better. And as I proceed further, we'll get to see some little example, in order not for us to just ponder much on this. Then when you look at this other slide, we talk about the impact of modern day slavery. We just want us to just have a glimpse of the impact this modern day slavery we're talking about on the society at large. Because as we know that the modern day slavery is a global issue, with millions of people being trapped into forced labor, debt bondage, and other form of exploitation. One basic impact is an economic impact. And how does it affect individual or a society or a country or a continent? When you exploit workers, most often you pay them less than the minimum wage. From there you talk about the human rights. Human rights will begin to come in. It happens everywhere. Everywhere where we are listening to this program, it happens. We've seen cases whereby workers are being exploited. They pay below the minimum wage or recommended minimum wage, or to an extent, these workers are not paid. Many of us have practical experience about this, or we have colleagues, we have friends, we have people who have passed through this or who are even passing through it. So this particular aspect of the economy is that what impact it does is that for that individual, you have deprived that individual his wage, his sweat, what he has worked for. And in turn, there are a lot of people who depend on this individual. So you see, it begins to have a kind of ripple effect right away from even from the country where you are working, earning this money, because you will not have this purchasing power. You will not have the capacity to be able to buy things, purchase things that you're supposed to buy within that same country where you are working, and in extension to your own country where you have family members, you have people who depend on you. So when you look at that, directly or indirectly, it has an economic impact because it will reduce the power for people to purchase, to earn a living, to live a certain kind of life, to afford some certain kind of, comfortability. So then for the health impact or implication is that forced labor can lead to physical and mental problems, including injury, disease, and psychological trauma. You see, this is very important because for most of us who are in the occupational health and safety field, this area is so much very, very important because there are a lot, we know the implication of when you have a mental health issues, when you have injuries, because the mental health issue can also lead to injuries in the workplace. It can also predispose you to different form of disease, psychosocial trauma, all this, we end up having an impact that is why we are there as an occupational health and safety practitioner to ensure that any project that we have is injury-free, is disease-free. And if this kind of practice is being done within such industry or such projects or company you find yourself, you discover that there's a risk factor, in that project. When we go further, we'll get to see how we could come in as an health and safety practitioner to be able to curb this global menace. So then we'll talk about the social impact. Modern day slavery also can erode, what we call trust and undermine what we call social cohesion, thereby exacerbating existing social inequality. Because when you begin to subject people, into modern day slavery, this affect them socially, how they relate with their society, how they socialize, and it begins to create a boundary between some social class, some category of human, let me just go down to the what do they call them? And people who work in maybe like domestic workers. There's always this social disintegration. There's always this, but for some family, you see the way they take care of their maid, their nanny, their domestic worker. You will hardly even know that this person is a domestic worker. In some family, in some certain places, you see that the difference is clear. They maltreat such individual. Those things affect socially how you tend to relate and how you mix with people. And, it's very important because one of the human rights, fundamental human right for human, you should have freedom to associate, freedom to do certain things, irrespective of what the nature of your job is, doing the right things. So for the human right impact, modern day slavery violates, as we all know, anybody or any society or individual who engage in those things that we call modern day slavery today, they are violating the fundamental human rights of that individual, freedom, dignity, and security of that individual, because by the United Nations Human Rights Commission, when you differentiate anybody from all this rights, it means what is happening at that period is modern day slavery. It happens everywhere. It happens in our respective countries, because even some what our government is doing within our own countries and continent are also a form of modern day slavery. Here we are not talking about the era of slave trade. Things have changed. Okay, so that is why we are using the word modern day slavery, because things has advanced. So they are doing it in a more advanced way, because if we look at what happening in one of the African countries that the military took over, when you begin to hear the history and some of those francophone countries, you discover that a certain Western country is controlling their resources, is managing their wealth. At this age, yes, there's still slavery, but it's on a modern level. It is being played in a modern way. So that is why we need to understand how all these things work. So now, when we look at the other part, which we call the global statistics, I just want us to look at the global statistics of modern day slavery. There was a research that was done by this global estimate of modern day slavery, I think 2022, from a work-free and international labor organization and the International Organization for Migration. So they had a collaboration whereby they carry out a statistics, a survey to determine, to get some particular figure of modern day slavery. And it was discovered that about 49.6 million are in forced labor and forced marriage, which is part of the modern day slavery we are talking about. Roughly a quarter fall under the category of children. Okay, so apart from that, we have about 27.6 million people out of the 49.6 million who are trapped in forced labor. Going further, we have about 17.3 million people, out of which 27.6 million are in forced labor exploitation in the private economy or in the private sector. And 6.3 million people out of the 27.6 million are in commercial sexual exploitation. All these things I'm talking about: forced labor, sexual exploitation, forced marriage, child, what do they call it? Having children to trade, do some kind of trade and some kind of work which they are not supposed to do at a particular age. All these things are a form of modern day slavery. Just like I've said, when we are talking slavery issue, we should not think about the people, the European, all those people who colonized Africa doing things, even within the African continent, the Asia, wherever we are located presently, a lot of things are happening that they fall into this category of modern day slavery. Okay, and nearly 4 million are in forced labor imposed by state authorities. There the government comes in, where you find out that you are in a place that they say they have a law and it's not working. You understand? They say they have a labor law and the labor law is not working. They say they have human rights. Human rights is not working. Even the same government exploit people. They impose a lot of things. So they're able to find out that 4 million, are in such kind of category. Then we have about 22 million people out of the 49.6 million are in forced marriage. Okay, so 2 out of 5 of every of these people were also children. So this is just a summary of the, would I say, recent global statistic that was done, to give a picture of what is actually happening around the world regarding modern day slavery. Now, we have to come to the aspect of where we fall in as an occupational health and safety practitioner. It's like as a professional, when we need to do anything within the organization, we need to introduce what we call a policy document. We have to develop a policy whereby it's not just in health and safety. In any setting you find yourself, in any corporate organization, in any organized society, you need to have a policy that need to be implemented. It's not about just having a policy, a written policy. A written policy without implementation is just like a sheet of paper, black and white, just there. So, but when we talk about policy, it needs to follow by implementation. So as an expert, as an occupational practitioner or a specialist, we need to advise organization, we need to advise our respective company, maybe in terms of consultation and all that. We need to raise this very strong observation about certain issues, when it comes to modern day slavery like this. And where we start from is policy development. Because when we develop a policy, this can help to implement, because you don't implement what you don't develop in the first place. So when you have a policy, you implement the policy, you develop a kind of procedure to prevent, and address the issue that is at stake, which is modern day slavery. So as an health and safety practitioner, we know it's not just about the health and safety policy we put everywhere. There are other many policies that are under health and safety, return to work policy, so many things, so many policies we need to be developing, So we need to be at that forefront. We need to understand that we have a huge role to play in many areas, So that is where we come in as in terms of policy development. Then in terms of risk assessment, having developed a policy, in the process of we implementing this policy, there you find out that the risk assessment will begin to come in. You begin to see that the training, education, awareness will begin to come in. Because it is very important that when we understand some certain indicator or red flag of what we call modern day slavery, then we begin to understand what will likely be the risk factor, which we can easily identify within our workplace. So it is very important that policy development and implementation is key. We need to be able to conduct risk assessment to identify potential indicators, like I've said, of modern day slavery, within our workplace. Then we have to train our employees. We need to train ourselves, also as a practitioner, so that people can be informed on how to recognize and how to spot and how to report potential instances of modern day slavery, because you cannot do it alone, even as a practitioner. That is why even when we carry out risk assessment, we have to go work with the workers, we have to work with the engineers, we have to work with the supervisor, because with the help of these people, we can be able to spot it from the root. So we are just there for the knowledge base and implementation and advisory level, but who can spot it? I haven't educated them, I haven't given them the awareness and for them to be informed about these are the things that are called or the indicator or the red flags. If they are informed, when they identify it, they can be able to communicate with us as a practitioner within such industry, organization, or project. Thereby, we can be able to help in our little way as an health and safety practitioner. Then going forward, what are these indicators? What are these red flags? What are these things we can see within the workplace that we can say this is a form of or an indicator of modern day slavery? In some cases, you see them happening in multiples. In some cases, there might just be like maybe one or two appearing. But irrespective of whichever ones you find, even if it's just one indicator, it is a modern day slavery that is taking place there. So which means more can happen, more can occur along the line. So one of those things we should be able to see as an indicator or a red flag is that when you find unsafe and unusual working condition, I know it could be funny. It could be funny, saying it, because these are what we see everywhere, especially those of us who work as an health and safety practitioner. We find it, we see it every day. But I will shock you by letting you to understand that it's a very good indicator of a modern day slavery, because if an organization or a project have a work site that is unsafe, unusual, we know what the Health and Safety at Work Act said. We know what all the regulation and standards have said, that employer have the responsibility to provide safe working conditions, safe work environment, equipment, everything. See, all these things, when an employer breach the required regulation and standard, they've introduced what we call modern day slavery. Why are they doing it? Why are they not providing the necessary thing? Why are they not making the workplace condition to be safe? It means they don't want you to be safe. That is the reality. And anybody who don't want you to be safe, in court, is just your enemy, which means he wants you there. So when you look at it, it means the person doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about your welfare. He doesn't care about your health. This is a very good indicator, but I know most of the time we just see it as normal thing. We know it's not good as a practitioner, but it's an indicator of modern day slavery, is a red flag. This is where your observation begin to come in. This is where you begin to take your risk assessment. We can develop a risk assessment for a modern day slavery. This initiative can be developed within our respective project or company, and also workers' appearance. Sometimes when you see your workers, the way they appear, the way they walk, you need to ask questions. You don't know what is happening. You don't know what they are passing through within the workplace. You don't know the condition of the workplace. You don't know if they are being abused. You don't know if a lot of things has affected the appearance of these workers. So many other indicators can lead to a kind of appearance of worker that will tell you there is an issue, because the appearance, when you have an unpleasant appearance of worker, is just even a risk factor. It's an hazard. Such kind of worker is an hazard within the workplace. It is better such person is not present in the workplace, because if the person is a worker who is an operator, we should be able to understand the implication. Whether you are an operator or you are working elsewhere, you discover that you are a very big risk, in such operation. So inadequate health and safety measure also within the work site. So this comes to us as a professional. We should keep trying our best. We know as a safety, we know what we do. We know we are there to save life. So there are some things or instances where we just, but we just keep that focus that the moment we keep saving life, the moment we keep preaching and advocating for a safe work environment, to insist that employer do the right thing, then we see we are at the forefront of dealing with the issue of modern day slavery. And also excessive recruitment fee. We've seen different organizations, at some point, there was nothing like, there's what we call supply company recruitment. At some point, it wasn't like that. Those days when you want to get employment, you get employment directly with the contractors. But these days we find a lot of companies, sub company, recruitment firm, maybe people just feel everybody have to do business. And you see, it is from that aspect that the problem of modern day slavery begin to expand, because people exploit individuals, consciously or unconsciously. Some people will tell you they have this kind of job here in this country and in this place, this. At the end of the day, you give them money, they charge you SS fee, you go to that country. It happens everywhere, even where we are, it happens. So these things are not new. So you discover that a lot of people are falling victim. This is modern day slavery. Now, also lack of freedom of association. You find yourself in an organization, you cannot associate. Where you are working, you cannot even associate with people. You are being restricted. When you're right as a human, you have the right to associate. You have the right for movement. See, any society that restricts people from coming together, I will not mention some country, because see, by human rights and this thing, everybody should be able to associate. We can form association. Any country that does not allow association, they are doing what we call modern day slavery. That is the reality. We should be able to associate, irrespective of your nationality, irrespective of the color of your skin, wherever you come from. The freedom to associate must be established. If you are in any place that you cannot establish that, then such place is hostile, and such place is encouraging modern day slavery. In some employment situation, you are not going to get an employment contract. So such kind of condition, you should know, is a very red flag that such place is not safe and it's not a good place for you. And also, any place or organization you find yourself that you have restriction of movement, it's also a good indicator that something is wrong here. And also excessive working hours. We see these things everywhere. We see it everywhere. If what is recommended by the United Nations, by the I think international and the ISO, World Health Organization, so many organizations like that, they have set standards, and best practice, International Labor Organization and all that said, 8 hours should be the standard. Okay, we know some industry might have some differences, so there's always a provision whereby you can extend, I think not more than, is it 3 or 4 hours? And anything which you are supposed to be paid for the extra hours, which is overtime. You see, any work you do that exceeds 12 hours, is modern day slavery, really. No matter the amount they want to give you as overtime, you are working more than 12 hours. It's crazy. No matter how attractive the overtime is, it shouldn't be allowed and it shouldn't be encouraged. When it's encouraged, when it's being practiced, it's what we call modern day slavery. And also, we have what we call the debt bondage. You know, sometimes you go into there are some kind of work you are being forced into do because there's a contract. You know, sometimes some people you will just be bonded by maybe your somebody parent is owing one family or one man money. You know, this thing happen especially in Africa. You know they just feel, oh, because I hold this man money, you can decide to give your daughter out, or you can decide to give your son out. You know, so you are indebted, you know, to give out your child because you owe somebody. It's time for you to pay back. So this child will begin to be enslaved. You know, be doing some. You know, it used to happen those days more rapidly, but these days I don't know how rapid it is. But this is also a good is another indicator for you to know that that is what is being practiced anywhere you see one. And lack of personal documents. You know, sometimes you find yourself in an organization whereby they restrict you access to your documents, to your international passports. Nobody has the rights to hold on to your travel documents. Nobody, no employer. Anywhere it is done, anywhere it is practiced, I'm telling you, it's a modern day slavery that is being practiced there. And also, when you work in an organization, you find yourself in a place whereby there's a threat of violence, unnecessary punishment. It's a good indicator. So as a professional, we need to understand these indicators. We need to know this red flag, because when we begin to spot them out, that is when we can be able to develop a proper risk assessment and find a way to control such activity within our respective organization. Like I said earlier, unpaid wages. A lot of people are victims of this. I wouldn't want to stress more on that. It's everywhere. It's everywhere except for the developed countries, you know. But when it comes to Africa, comes to the Middle East, Asians and all that, we know what most of us are passing through, you know, and a lot of workers are passing through. So I think that is very clear to us. Then how do we implement preventive measure in our workplace, in our respective workplace? Because preventing modern day slavery in the workplace require comprehensive approach that incorporate both internal and external measures. We cannot do it alone as a practitioner or as a professional. See, to deal with this issue has to be a collaborative effort. Okay, one entity cannot even deal with it. A government alone cannot deal with it. An NGO need to come in, private sectors, a lot of people, individual, we have to come in collectively to be able to ensure that these things work. And also, one of the way is due diligence. You know, as a professional, we need to, you know, that is why in a big organization, you discover that in their supply chain, you know, in their procurement process, they always involve, you don't do it without the consent of the health and safety department, you know, because your supply chain also incorporates your manpower. When you do they do manpower supply of this, supply of material, PPE and all that, you begin to see where those problems begins to come in. Because as a matter of fact, when you disenfranchise workers of the basic PPE or the quality and standard of PPE, it's just a modern day slavery. We don't know. These things look so simple, but these are modern day slavery, because you are not giving the worker the rightful protection he or she deserve. So when we talk about due diligence, we need to conduct a kind of thorough due diligence on suppliers and business partners to assess their risk of involvement in modern day slavery. Because if you are able to assess those things from the supplier, subcontractor, or whichever way they appear or they come in, or your business partner, you'll be able to spot, you know. That is why when you are doing all those There's what when you're doing tender, all those kind of things. You see, somehow you don't just, it's not about just assessing the health and safety like that, you know. So because there are some questionnaires some will send, some clients will send like that for you to, for them to assess your health and safety, but it should go beyond that. You know, they should be able to assess the organization involvement in modern day slavery. When you begin to see some unusual practices, you should be able to spot that this company is encouraging modern day slavery. And as a professional, if you are in that position whereby you are the one checking the aspect of the health and safety, you can be able to spot that and you can make your comment and recommendation. That is where we come in. And that is why we can, that is how we can prevent. Supply chain transparency, you know, promoting transparency in the supply chain by mapping and disclosing information about supplier and their labor practice. When an employer, it's not about just giving contracts. You need, that is why when you see a very big organization and government need to implement, see, before they give a contract, some will have to go. I heard of a company who lost a project like that. When the HSE department of that client went to the accommodation camp to assess the facility of the workers, what they saw was alarming. And they did not give them the contract. This is what we are talking about. You can see that in modern day slavery, what we do most of the time is part of these things we are talking about, whether by prevention or by allowing it to happen within an organization. So you see, we have a very key role to play, a very key role to play, you know, especially when it comes to workers. Okay, so whistleblowing protection, it is also very important because when we do awareness, when we train workers, when we educate them, we give them this information, we tend to make them understand that when they spot this red flag, when they spot these indicators, they need to inform us as a professional. So what do we do? What are we doing to protect these people? Because they will be what we call whistleblower. They will be the one to give us the information that this has happened, this has happened. I was able to see this and that. So how do we protect? Because if you don't show an evidence of whistleblower protection within such an organization, people see things and close their eyes. We can never achieve anything in that aspect until we design a policy to protect workers. A policy needs to be developed in that area as well. Now, there's what we call ethical recruitment practice. We need to implement what we call ethical recruitment practice that ensure fair and transparent hiring process. It's a very big problem, especially in the Middle East. Most people will have this problem, failure in ethical recruitment practice. A lot of companies are complicit to this. But until we get it right, and the truth is that that is why in the recruitment process, it's not supposed to be the duty of the HRO alone. The health and safety department should be involved in all department dealings. That is the reality. We should be involved in all the department dealing, but not like we are overriding the department, but at least we need to have the knowledge. We need to have the understanding of what is happening. Even if they are not telling you to come and know what is happening, we need to be very vigilant to understand the process that is happening so that when we begin to spot these things, we can raise this observation as a practitioner that this unethical practice can lead to this within the workplace. So, and we can develop a business case to all these issues. With this, management can be able to buy in to our advice or knowledge we tend to share to them. And like I've said earlier, we cannot do that alone. There must be a collaborative effort, you know, with other authorities, government authority, non-governmental organization, you know, by collaborating with law enforcement agency and non-governmental organization is essential for effectively combating modern day slavery, because information sharing is key. You know, information sharing is key because when you share information and best practice with the law enforcement agency and not NGO to improve identification and investigation of modern day slavery cases, we need to be at the forefront of advocacy. Also, joint initiative, by collaborating on joint initiative with either NGOs, governments, law enforcement agencies to raise awareness, to educate the public, to provide support to victims of modern day slavery, because they need our support. Some of them are passing through it. How do we do? People commit suicide. We don't know why people commit suicide. So people are being enslaved by this modern day slavery we are talking about. We've seen it, we've had a cases in one of these Middle East countries. Somebody, was it sometime last year or 2 years ago, somebody went to the rooftop, committed a suicide. Even police came to rescue, but unfortunately, they came to the scene, and before you know, this guy just, you could imagine somebody taking his or her life. If you understand what that person has passed through, for people to commit suicide, it is not one certain action. It was an accumulated effect. It accumulated before it get to that spot that the person could not control. So these things, they look simple, but the end result is not funny. Some of them, some of the workers, they committed suicide on site. So it's just very important we take a note of all these things and spot them out. Like I've said, advocacy is key. And also raising awareness and advocacy for a change. We have spent much of our time. I'm just trying to look at my time. So public education campaign is very key. Community outreach is very key. Media advocacy is very key. Partnership is very key, like I've said earlier. And in conclusion, and call to action is that combating modern day slavery requires a collective effort involving government, businesses, civil society, individual. And I would just want to leave us with a word, or with this statement, that let's work together to create a world where everyone can live in freedom and dignity. Thank you very much for giving me this time and privilege to share my knowledge and understanding regarding modern day slavery. I will keep the floor open for the few minutes that is left. I will just encourage one or two of us to make our own contribution in relation. I know for sure, as a health and safety practitioner, we must have one or two experience to share regarding this, and based on what the information I've given so far. Thank you very much. The floor is open for those who have one or two contributions to make on this discussion. Thank you very much. The floor is open. The two Davids in the house, Mr. Jackson, we have Sarat, we have few numbers of people today in attendance, but be it as it may, let's have your inputs or one or two contribution or advice. Mr. David. Mr. Jackson. I have to call by names because we are not much. Let's have our contribution. Our time is fast spent. Okay, Mr. David, you have the floor. You have the floor. Mr. David, you have the floor. Yeah.
Good evening, all. Yeah, this is a very interesting topic. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you clearly. Yeah, loud and clear.
It's a very important topic because this is something that we go through on a daily basis. We experience these things. even though we sometimes keep a blind eye, but this is very, very, very evident especially in the construction industry. I will share my own experience. There was a time the company where I work, they recruited, they decided to send some of the workers to go on a rigor training. So this rigor training took some days, and later they passed and they got their certificates. But these riggers could not exercise their duties confidently, because when they try to do what they are taught, when they try to unleash the training given to them in the site, they get threats. They get threats from their foreman that they will cut their salary, that they should listen to them, that this, that. And then when the safety is like trying to argue with them that what is the basis of your training if you cannot do what you are taught, if you cannot come and give a practical evidence of the thing you learned during the training. They will say the foreman said they should do. If they don't do, they will cut their salary, they will terminate them, they will suspend them. So these things, intimidation, frequent intimidation is also a part of modern day slavery, where you don't have a free will, where you cannot speak your mind, where you cannot express your opinion, where you cannot even do the things you're supposed to do out of fear of the consequences. So these things are very, very much clear, and it's happening in our daily lives. Even though sometimes we think it's just minimal, it's minor, but these things play a vital role in subjecting these workers to fear. And a slave is always living in fear. A slave has no will. A slave has no opinion of his own. So no matter how we try to paint it, no matter how we try to think that the slavery is something that happened years back, still occurring. And so long as the construction department or the operation department influence like 85% of what happens in the construction site, modern day slavery is bound to occur. But just like you said, some certain practices, some certain administrative courses, enlightenment to the top management can help to minimize this and even eradicate it completely. So this is my own opinion based on experience I have in the site. So what we did to solve the situation was that those workers were taken back to the construction guys, and riggers were employed specifically for the sole aim of rigging and slinging. And they were now under the safety department. So they could not be controlled or influenced by anyone. Their sole aim, their sole responsibility is rigging and slinging. So no one can influence them or tell them to go and do what is not in their scope or a responsibility. Thank you.
In fact, thank you very much for your wonderful contribution based on experience and how you guys were able to cope such a situation. It's a wonderful one that we all have to learn from. As a matter of fact, because you could see the way you guys did it. Because the truth is that taking it away from the construction team or the project team and bring them, having those workers or those riggers and slingers under the HSE team, they will tend to work like a safety, because in a real ideal situation, they are supposed to be under the health and safety, because that is where you can see transparency in executing their job without compromise and without fear of intimidation and all that. So just like you said, you've used some little words or phrase to name everything. Once you are doing any work, you are working anywhere that you cannot speak, you don't have the freedom to speak, you are always afraid. The activity that is happening there, because before you speak, some set of people will threaten you. All these things we saw what I've said so far, and they are just good indicator. So we should, as a professional, we should think decisively on how we can be able to deal with such kind of situation and also learn. That is why it is good for us to come up like this. Now I've picked one or two things from what Mr. David have said, which also we could learn from all these things and also by implementing on our different project on site. Anyone else that has anything to contribute? Let me hear and let us hear your experience.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, good evening.
Yes, Mr. Jackson, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And Stephen, thank you so much for your excellent presentation.
Welcome,
Very
sir.
good presentation and quite an interesting topic. And just before I make my own contribution to your presentation, just a quick few words on David's experience as enunciated in his comment. That site supervisor or manager that was threatening the workers not to attend the training or else that they will be penalized. If such matter is brought to the attention of the client company, that supervisor or manager was supposed to be fired immediately from that project. For an organization that is serious about safety, that person is supposed to be demobilized immediately. He should not spend an hour longer than necessary on that project, because with that kind of mindset, you begin to wonder what kind of safety drive is it coming to impart on the workers on site. And coming back to the main presentation, there are so many ways that modern day slavery can be prevented or at least reduced to the barest minimum. And I will look at it from the construction industry, which is where I have been working in most of my life. Years ago, when I was working with an operator company, there was the need to engage a subcontractor, a very big name in the construction industry, for the installation of HVAC ducting. And I was among the persons that were asked by the company to pay a visit to the potential contractor's facility in Lagos. So 3 of us were on that trip. We arrived the facility, very big manufacturing yard. But to our utmost surprise, anything about safety in terms of practice was almost zero. And I'll give you an instance. Workers that were working on the factory floor doing hazardous job, the job they were actually doing was the cutting of stainless steel metals to form a HVAC duct. For those of you that are familiar with the HVAC installation. And these workers, they were not wearing hand gloves, and most of them were walking around with flip-flop bathroom slippers, no safety shoes. And when we asked the factory manager, why are these personnel not wearing PPE? He told us, well, their company is not that rich. They are not like the oil and gas company. And so management is not able to go into the expenses of providing required PPE for these workers to be able to work safely. So as the HSE rep on the team, I took note of that, and others, those from quality and production, they asked 1 or 2 questions, and we left. When we got back and we made our report to our supervisor, I reported to the client that there was no way we were going to be able to work with this company. One, the company has not been procuring and issuing PPE to their workers. And even if we compare that to, a week or two will not be enough to train these workers on how to wear PPE for them to get use of it. So instead, let us look for a smaller company that is already conversant with the use of PPE. Then from there, we can take it up and we mentor them on other aspects of safety practices on site. And at the end of the day, that was what we eventually did. So the message here is that before a subcontractor is engaged at any level, during the pre-qualification, the important such organization assigned to safe work practices should be investigated, should be thoroughly probed, and be sure that, yes, these people, they are well into safety. They may not be 100%, no company is 100%, but there is a manageable level. You could assess and said, okay, they are at this level, bring them in. We can support them to get to where we want them to get to. But when they are zero level and you do not see that commitment or indication of the management to rise up, to be supported, to stand, they want to remain at ground level so that they will maximize their profit. You know that's not a company you can work with. If you indicate such red flags and go ahead to engage such contractors, there are chances that within a week or two of their working for your company, they are going to shatter your safety record. You are going to be recording LTI left and right. That is if there are no fatalities. So it is very, very important during pre-qualification of a potential subcontractors to look into these areas. Then when you have engaged a contractor and they are working for you on site, during safety work done or during normal site visit, engage with one or two of these contractors, personnel. Ask them, when last did he or she receive his or her salary? If the company is owing him, he will tell you, I have not been paid for the past 2 months. And when you have such a situation, know that that person, half of his mind is on the job, and the other half is on how his family is faring back home. And that is a very good recipe for accident on site. So a good company or a good contractor should not be owing their workers. They should be providing required PPE for them to do their work. Everything that has to do with safety, they must be serious about it. Like I said earlier on, they may not be able to do everything right, but the willingness on their part to be allowed to be coached, to be trained is very, very important. Once that willingness is not there, you don't engage such company. So that is the contribution I wish to add to your presentation. Once again, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. You've said a lot as well in a more summarized way. And thank you very much for that. And like you all can see that this topic is more like maybe we are the one championing it, because when you look at it, most of the things that happens in where we work, especially in construction, has to do with almost or more than 50% related to modern day slavery. So I want to encourage every one of us to keep on pushing and advocating. So I would just want to, if we have one or two persons also who have one or two things to say, kindly just indicate. The floor is open for you so that we can round up this section.
Mr. Francis, good evening, sir.
Hey,
hello, Mr. Francis, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. It seems you're on the road, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, I could feel the background. So you're free to speak.
Okay, I wasn't at the beginning of the the meeting though, but I was able to pick one or two things from what you guys were discussing. You know, majorly, I want to say here, I really have a rich construction experience, construction background in the oil and gas. And when you are talking about slavery in the work as pertains to the employee, is very rampant. So you're going to find out that people are being forced to work the way they work based on the fact that they've got no other thing to do. They have to feed their families, and of course, at the same time, their safety is being jeopardized because if you don't have remuneration, there's no way you can have a good mindset for your work, because home has to be settled first. So you find out that there are most contractors, mostly as it is in this society we are in, third world countries like Nigeria, you find out there are contractors that you just have to work with. You just have to work because you want to earn a living. And at the end of the day, when you work at the end of the month, you are not being paid, you just continue to work because you just have this belief that at the end of the project, if it enters the mind of if the spirit of God who enters the mind of the contractor, he will pay you your remuneration. So it's very common in Nigeria. So because people, they don't have anything to do, they've got no option. They just have to do what they have to do to be able to, at the end of the day, earn a living for their families, of which the earning is not based on salary, but based on months and months of work without pay. You understand? So it's just a sacrifice that most employees they do because at the end of the day they want to earn something for their families. It's very common, and it's something that is a hazard in itself. So that alone is able to disorganize an employee, disorganize your mindset. It will even make you work in an unsafe way. So I just hope that people come to terms with what is happening in the developed countries, where when you work, you see the benefit of your work, you're being remunerated, you're being given allowances for your work, your hazard allowances haven't been paid for the kind of job, depending on the kind of job that you do. So this topic, it really came at the right time, and I really appreciate the organizer for bringing this topic, and it's something that later I'm going to play the recordings and see on how I can benefit from what has previously discussed in the program. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis.
Thank you for your contribution. It's really, like we all know, when you look at this topic, look at everything. I believe even for those who have not said anything, will not tell me that he has not seen or have a situation whereby you have a first-hand experience in all these things. As long as you're a health and safety practitioner, we might have come across one or two things relating to modern-day slavery, but we might not know that this is all about modern-day slavery. But that is why we are here together. That is why we are here to share information. We just know all these things, but we might not know it's modern-day slavery. So that is why this kind of platform is available for us to harness, so that we can be able to understand what is there and see what we can champion and see what we can advocate. But like I said during the time of the discussion, and just like what Mr. Omojade have said, see, people pass through all these things, and even we as a practitioner, we cannot do it alone. Even the government cannot do it alone. It has to be a collaborating effort. You know, there should be a call of action. All entities must come together in combating these issues. Because if such thing is happening by contractors, who is giving them that leverage? Who is giving them the opportunity to exercise such kind of practice? If government has designed their policy or their law that say this must be this, not just having a policy, not just having a law, a government should be able to establish an institution, an enforcement agency that will go for monitoring to observe that all these things are working. All these things that they've written down, people are implementing. So from there, you discover that even the work will be more easier for us. It will be more even easier for an individual. It will be more easier for an NGO. So everybody need to come together in collaboration. One thing I will leave us today is no entity can fight modern day slavery alone. It is only with collaboration that we can achieve this fight or crisis globally. Thank you very much for everyone who have attended this session today, for your individual inputs. And for those who have listened, I believe we might have learned one or two things. I think at this juncture, I would like to call it a day. So we'll meet next week, same Thursday. And the topic for next week will be communicated to us as usual. Thank you very much for creating your time. Even for those of us who are on the road, we just have to go in and log in to see what is happening. So it's good, it's good. Yeah. Any other contribution? I don't think there's any. So, like I've said, have a nice day, everyone, and have a nice, a good weekend ahead. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.